Hello and welcome to video number 2. Let's get right to it. If you remember last time, I had done the post-production on those 4 pictures I had taken down at the small stream using various shutter speeds. Now you could probably tell from my comments that the one at f32 was the one that I really liked the most. But there was something that I knew in the back of my mind, but I really hadn't paid much attention to until I started doing the tweaking in post-production on those particular images. Look with me. Notice with me these 2 pictures. The one on the left is the one taken at f32, the one on the right at f16. Now at f32 you would have the deepest possible depth of field for that lens, and so you would expect the image there to be the sharpest of any of them. But if you'll notice the shot taken at f16 on the right, notice the end of the log that's pointed toward the camera. Notice how you can see the end grain with much more detail than the one at f32. Also notice the stone on the right edge mid-frame. You can see the detail in it better at f16. And if you examine closely most everything in the frame, the f16 image is sharper than the f32. It's curious that this is the situation. There's a fairly simple explanation. We've simply found the sweet spot of this particular lens. Every lens has one. Usually it's in the middle of the aperture range. Given that this lens is capable of f3.5 to f32, f16 falls right in the middle of that. Most lenses, as you get toward the extremes, will start showing a little bit less clarity around, particularly around the edges of the images. But now we've limited ourselves a bit more because if you recall, we were going to shoot at ISO 100 because that was going to give us the best quality from the camera body. Now we're saying that f16 gives us the best clarity from the particular lens. Well, that's limiting us because even further, I said that around 1 second, give or take just a bit, was the appearance of the water that I liked best. So now we've established these factors, but we're still trying to get a proper exposure. But now we've locked in these things. How are we going to make this work? Well, if you'll head back with me down to the stream for just a bit, I'll show you exactly what we're going to do. Well, welcome to a day when the weatherman finally got it right. We have a day where we have overcast skies, which gives us nice, even light. I'm not sure how long that's going to last because we had showers come through last night and this morning, and it's going to be clearing out behind that very shortly. In fact, I think every now and then I see a little bit of blue peeking through, but hopefully we'll have some uniform light for what we're doing this morning. Now remember, we've given ourselves a few constraints. ISO 100 is going to give us the best quality from the camera body. f16 is going to give us the most sharpness from the lens. And my target speed is about 1 second. But right now, with no filter or anything on the lens, I get 1/3 of a second at f16. So that's slower than we've had before, but it's still not anywhere near the 1 second time frame. So how are we going to address that? Well, the first thing we'll do, even though the light is kind of flat, there's still some reflection on the top pool. So the first thing we want to do is, just like we did before, we want to address that reflected light. And so we'll cut that down by a polarizer. Whereas last time I was using a screw-in filter that just simply goes to the end of the lens, today I'm using a filter system. This works with a ring on the end of the lens and then the filter holder that slips onto that. It attaches exactly the same way as a screw-in filter. With the filter holder in place, we simply want to take our polarizer and slide it in closest to the lens. Once that's done, we want to do exactly what we did before. We want to tone the polarizer. We want to adjust the polarizer. So in my case, I want no reflection at all. So we want to turn the polarizer until it completely cuts any reflection. So with the polarizer in place and adjusted to where I want it, given the fixed features of ISO 100 and f16, that gives us a shutter speed of 1/2 second, which is actually twice as fast as I want it to be. Before I go further, let me actually back out the polarizer and give you an image with no filter whatsoever, and then one with the polarizer in place. The overcast is breaking up, so I'm seeing some blue come through. We're now at 1/4 of a second with no filters whatsoever. So let's take a look at that image. Okay, you'll notice the reflection on the top pool, and now we'll insert the polarizer and see what that gives us in these changing conditions. With the polarizer in place and adjusted where I want it, it's still giving me 1/2 of a second, even though our conditions are changing all the time. That's still twice as fast as we want, but let's see the difference between the image with the polarizer and the one without. Alright, I have a proper exposure with the fixed settings of ISO 100 and locked in at f16, but my shutter speed is still twice as fast as I want it. I can slow the shutter speed down to 1 second to get the effect that I want, but then the picture is going to be overexposed. We're going to correct that by the use of neutral density filters. Now, in very non-technical terms, a neutral density filter doesn't look much more than a smoked piece of glass. But they have different densities, different darknesses, and they each have a value. This particular one is called a one-stop neutral density filter. So when I add that to the filter system, I'm going to increase my shutter speed by 1 stop. Now, there are varying densities of these, and they can be stacked, and it's going to require a bit of experimentation to find out exactly which combination is going to give us just exactly the picture that I want anyway. Just to show you an example, let me put this first one in place. With the one-stop filter in place, my shutter speed is actually recording as faster than it was before I put it on. But again, that's because the clouds are breaking up and I'm getting more light. So what that means is, for me to figure out how this is going to actually work, it's going to require some experimentation and perhaps even some combination of neutral density filters to get where I want to be. I'm sure you don't want to watch me sliding filters in and out while I try to get it right. So let me do the shots I need, and then I'll meet you back up in the office for the post-production. Well, I've made it back to the house, changed into one of my favorite t-shirts, and I'm settled down in the office. Let's see what kind of results we have. Here's the image using the one-stop neutral density filter. Because of the changing light conditions, this was taken at 1/4 of a second, and it really doesn't offer us anything that we didn't already have using just the polarizer. For this image, I used a 2-stop neutral density filter. Again, changing light conditions thwarted my efforts. This exposure is only 1/2 second, half of our target exposure. Finally, using a 3-stop neutral density filter, and this time with cooperating clouds, I finally reached the 1 second target. Over it actually, this image is a 1.6 second exposure. Notice the smoothness of the falling water and the appearance of the lower pool. Exactly the effect I wanted. So why all this effort for seemingly such a small result? Well, I wanted to work within certain parameters. ISO 100 to get the best quality from the camera body, f16 to get the best sharpness from the lens, and 1 second shutter speed simply because I liked the effect that it created in the water. Given the changing light conditions, I had to work around several problems to get the finished results. Now, why bother with all this? Well, what I've learned today in these conditions will be applicable in any number of circumstances. So it's good information to have. I learned to take pictures originally before there was anything digital. Everything was manual, and many of those tricks still apply in modern photography. And sometimes the difference between taking a picture and making a picture is the amount of information you have at hand for you. So hopefully you found this useful. I hope you did. If you did, then scroll down to the bottom and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future videos, please leave those as well. If you like what you saw, please click the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more of this and have notifications, then please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.